The Commonwealth of Kentucky and the province of Ontario have some things in common. The Carolinian Forest, a history of horse racing, and of course trade and business opportunities. Our next guest is a Democratic governor in what we traditionally think of as a very red state. So here to talk business and politics, we welcome the 61st Governor of Kentucky, Steve Beshear. And it's a great pleasure to have you here, Governor.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be with you.
Nice to have this stop as part of your tour of the province of Ontario. And I guess the first question's obvious. What are you doing here?
Well, we're creating jobs for our people, and we're doing it in two ways. One, we're trying to increase trade with Ontario and with Canada in general. You know, Canada is our #1 trading partner. About 33% of the trade that we engage in is with Canada, and we've got about a $22 billion export business. We have some of our small and medium-sized businesses here on a trade mission. They're meeting folks, expanding their markets, and of course, as they expand, as they sell more, they're going to have to hire more Kentuckians to do more of their work, and so that will create jobs for Kentuckians. The other thing we do is we build our foreign direct investment. We have created thousands of jobs in Kentucky by bringing companies from other places into Kentucky. They love it. They hire our people, they produce their products, and they make money. And so we work both of those angles, and it's been pretty successful for us.
What do you make that we buy from you?
Well, one thing that you buy from us is bourbon whiskey. We make 95% of the bourbon in Kentucky, and I like to say the other 5% is counterfeit.
Jack Daniels is counterfeit?
Well, it's not a bourbon. It's a Tennessee whiskey.
Okay.
Oh, yes. You know, there is a distinction.
Okay, fair enough.
It's a great product, and of course, it's made by a good Kentucky company, Brown-Forman. So I'll say good things about that one. But a lot of automotive business goes on between our states. We are about the third or fourth largest producer of cars and light trucks in the United States. People don't really realize that.
I don't think anybody knows that. Who's in your state?
Well, we have Ford has 2 huge plants in Louisville. They've just invested $1.2 billion. They are hiring about 4,000 Kentuckians on 3 different shifts around the clock. Toyota, we have the mother plant of Toyota in North America. We make the Camry, and we just landed the Lexus. We're going to make the 350 Lexus, and it's first time outside of Japan that's going to be made. That's another 750 people and a $500 million investment. And then down in a town called Bowling Green, we make every Corvette in the world. So GM is there, and any Corvette you see anywhere in the world was made right in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Tell me they still make Louisville Sluggers in Louisville, Kentucky.
They do indeed. And we not only make them, but we have a big museum and a place to visit. It's a great tourist attraction. They not only have some batting cages, of course, so that the kids and some of us adults can try to hit the baseball, but they have the original contracts of folks like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Stan Musial and all of these historic players when they sign their little contracts to put their names on the bat. So it's a great place to visit.
One of the things I mentioned in the opening that your state and my province share is a love of horse racing, and I want to just put some of the statistics up. Courtesy of the American Horse Council, of the impact on that business to your bottom line. So here we go. The Kentucky horse racing industry produces goods and services valued at $2.3 billion. Almost 200,000 Kentuckians are involved in the industry as horse owners, service providers, employees, and volunteers. The Kentucky horse industry directly provides almost 52,000 full-time equivalent jobs, and there are 320,000 plus horses in Kentucky, over 50% of which are involved in showing and recreation. Now, I know numbers don't always tell the whole story, but that seems to tell a story of an incredible dependency on one industry. Is that right?
Well, it's not a dependency. It's a great signature industry for us. And it is a $2.3 billion industry, but you know, we've got a lot of industries that produce those kinds of numbers also. But it is a signature industry for us. And you know, when you think of Kentucky, you probably think of Kentucky Fried Chicken, of course, but you also think of the Kentucky Derby.
For sure.
And you think of thoroughbred racing. And we are the horse capital of the world. And we not only think of ourselves as that, but I think we are in the sense that most horses are bred in Kentucky. I mean, there are some that are bred in other states and here in Canada, but the vast majority of them come from Kentucky. And our breeding industry is really the premier part of the business for thoroughbred racing. We have racing there, and of course we have Churchill Downs and the Kentucky Derby every year. I get to give away the trophy every year, so that's part of the reason you run for governor in Kentucky. And we've got Keeneland racing, and of course the racetracks are great too. But you know, our horse business is even broader than that. We have standardbreds, saddlebreds, sport horses. Everybody in Kentucky loves horses, and most people have one someplace.
Let's do some comparing then, because you know we've been going through a pretty big debate in the last year in the province of Ontario as to what kind of government involvement there ought to be with the horse racing industry. So let's compare notes. Do you, the state of Kentucky, subsidize with taxpayers' money the horse racing industry there?
Not really. The horse racing industry there at this point is pretty self-sufficient. We have a breeders' fund that comes from some of the money off of the racetracks themselves and the betting that goes on, the parimutuel betting. But we don't subsidize it to any degree. Now, I've been trying to get expanded gaming in our state.
You want casinos and
yes,
and horse racing together.
Because for two reasons. One, I would love to have the $300 to $500 million that casino gaming could bring to Kentucky to invest in our education system and our healthcare system and all of those things that our people need. Secondly, our racing industry in particular and breeding industry is competing with other states that are trying to do the same thing, and every one of those other states right now subsidize their breeders' funds, their purses at the tracks and all of that with some kind of expanded gaming revenue. And I just want us to have a level playing field because I want us to continue to be the horse capital of the world.
But from what I've read, you've had some trouble trying to get people to buy into your casino idea. How come?
Well, about 80% of the people in Kentucky say that they want to vote on it, put it on the ballot, and the polls show that it'll pass. But as a lot of people know, it's one thing for the people to want something, it's another thing for the legislature to agree to vote for it. Because a few minority loud voices get people's attention on any issue. And, you know, we're still considered a little bit of the Bible Belt in the South, in Kentucky. And you've got some opposition on the basis of religion. You've got some opposition on the basis just people are against gambling in general. But most folks would love to be able to spend their entertainment dollars in Kentucky going to a casino as opposed to going right across the river into Indiana or Ohio or Missouri or Illinois. And we're losing Kentucky money, you know, to all of the states surrounding us right now.
There is something about casinos, though, and I know we just went through it here in Toronto, which is a city of 2.5 million people. City Council voted 40-4. I mean, it wasn't close, against citing a casino in this city, for all of the reasons that you've heard ad nauseum. What do you think it is about casinos that that people are not interested in the economic arguments about lost revenue spilling over the border to another state?
Well, I think people are. Quite honestly, I don't know what your polls show here in terms of what the population feels. I can tell you the population in Kentucky, it shows that they would like to have that because a lot of Kentuckians enjoy that kind of entertainment. So it'd be interesting to know what the people of Toronto feel as opposed to what the politicians feel.
Last time it went to a referendum, it got voted down.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now, mind you, it's 15 years ago, but still, I'm not sure anything's changed.
Right. Well, I think you'd get a different result in Kentucky.
And we're not the buckle of the Bible Belt here either. People didn't like it anyway.
Right.
Again, you met the Premier of Ontario today.
I did.
Kathleen Wynne. You know that she is going through quite a reevaluation of how to keep the horse racing industry alive here. The province used to cut a pretty big check to horse racing industry types every year, and that check is a lot smaller these days. What advice would you, I don't know if you gave her any advice when you met with her, or what advice would you give to her that you could share with us now about how to keep this industry thriving? Well,
first of all, she's a very impressive lady. I was impressed in our conversations that she's thoughtful, that she thinks through issues, and that obviously she's got the best interest of Ontario at heart. And if somebody from another party was in, you know, they would be the same way. But we talked a little bit about horse racing, and you know, she indicated that she was trying to find that balance of kind of looking at the whole gaming industry and racing as a whole, and trying to find the right balance that keeps a viable industry going, because it is a wonderful industry to have, and at the same time have some revenue to invest in things like education and all of the things that she has to do also. So I think she's going through a process right now, and I'm sure she will with the Parliament to try to figure all that out.
We got 50,000 people here who depend on their paycheck on that industry. But as I suggested, the check that the government is prepared to cut to the industry now is a lot smaller. Do you think it needs to be bigger in order to keep this industry alive?
I don't know the details of your particular situation here. Ours has always been fairly self-sufficient. Our problem in Kentucky is that now we're facing that competition from other states that supplement the industry in their states with gaming revenues. And so we're trying to figure out ways to make sure that we stay competitive. I have trainers and owners say to me all the time, Governor, you know, I'm sorry, but I pulled my horses up to West Virginia last weekend and ran in those races up there at that track because the purses were 3 times as big as the purses at Churchill Downs or at Keeneland. So, you know, it's starting to affect us, and I just want to make sure that we maintain this very viable industry. We've got 100,000 people that are dependent upon that industry here. So, you know, we want it as a signature industry, and I'm going to make sure it stays that way.
100,000 people in a state whose population is?
4.3 million.
4.3 million. That's
right.
a lot.
That's a lot of people that depend upon that industry.
Shall we talk some brass knuckle politics from your country? Your country is fascinating to watch from up here, I must tell you. The leader of the Republicans in the Senate, whom you know, because you ran against him, and he beat you pretty badly, I hasten to add, Mitch McConnell, has made it his life's work to derail Barack Obama's agenda. What do you think of that?
I think it's terrible, quite honestly. And it's not just Mitch McConnell. It's the whole ball of wax in Washington right now. I mean, Americans, I think you would find across the board, are pretty disgusted with politics in Washington, D.C. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican right now, you're disgusted with the whole thing because nobody's thinking about this country, everybody's thinking about themselves. That's the way I look at it, and that's the way most people look at it. You know, it's time for Mitch McConnell, instead of making it his priority to stop President Obama from doing anything, is to sit down with President Obama and try to move the country ahead. The Democrats need to be doing that. The Republicans need to be doing that. We do that in Kentucky. I'm a Democratic governor. I've got a Republican Senate and a Democratic House. And I have been able to get them together, and we've done some pretty amazing things and some pretty tough things and made some tough decisions. We just solved our unfunded pension liability that every government has. And we did it partially by raising $100 million in new revenue.
How'd you do that?
Well, we took a tax credit off the Kentucky income tax. We closed some loopholes. We did a number of things to raise that $100 million. And you don't find that happening in very many places right now in this, quote, Tea Party environment that much of America finds itself in. But, you know, I think Americans would tell you here in Canada, it's time for us to get our act together because we're disgusted with Washington, D.C. and how it does not function.
What do you think could, because I hear that all the time up here, is that people, and I don't mean this in any kind of smug way, but when you look down south, it looks at times as if your government, your national government, is completely dysfunctional, incapable of making decisions.
It doesn't look that way, it is.
It is that way, okay.
It is that way.
Well, can you see any road out of that at the moment?
Well, I remain hopeful, but, you know, they continue to act like kids in the cafeteria in a food fight instead of adults. You know, when people ask me how we did it in Kentucky and how we got people together, I said, you know, it's very simple. We act like adults. You know, and that means you sit down with each other. You have different philosophies. You're not going to agree on everything, but you are there for the same purpose, and that is to try to find some answers to some tough questions and issues and move your state forward. And more often than not, we've been able to do that.
But you know, Governor, as I look at you, and I've known you for a grand total of 15 minutes here, you seem to be the kind of guy who likes people, who can put your arm around somebody, invite him up to the governor's mansion for a drink and talk shop.
Right.
President Obama is not seen as a kind of a guy who can do that. Does he have to wear some of this as well?
Well, his style, I think the president came into office thinking, well, everybody's just going to do the right thing. Now, I would love to be able to think that too, but it's just not the way the system works. And of course, he was in the Senate for a while, but I think that he probably didn't have as good an appreciation of what the presidency needs to be from a personal standpoint. And he's learned that. I mean, he's doing better with that all the time. But I think he perhaps was a little idealistic about, that the two sides would sit down and just look toward the best interest of the country. And, unfortunately, you don't see that much right now. But the president, I'm going to tell you, when he goes out of office, he's going to be known for a lot of things that are good in our country. The Affordable Care Act.
Obamacare.
Oh, yes, Obamacare. And you know what? He wears that proudly. And we're implementing the health benefits exchange in Kentucky. We're expanding our Medicaid program for two reasons. Number one, it's the right thing to do. I've got 640,000 Kentuckians who are going to have health insurance for the first time. Every Kentuckian will have affordable health insurance for the first time in our history.
He's also doubled the debt on all of those Kentuckians, and they're going to be paying it back for the rest of their life and their children's lives and their grandchildren's lives.
If you go back and look at our debt has been there since World War II.
This big?
And, well, not this big, but our economy's never been this big either. So I just don't buy that, in terms of not moving forward. I did an economic study, and I had outsiders do it. I had PricewaterhouseCoopers, I had a university group come in, and it's going to create 17,000 jobs for us to expand Medicaid. It's going to be a $15 billion positive economic impact on our state over the next 8 years. It's pretty hard to turn that down from an economic standpoint, and for your folks to have health care. If you don't have a healthy workforce, then you're not going to grow and you're not going to prosper. Well, we're going to have that healthy workforce.
As you look at the national scene in your country and you consider President Obama obviously can't run again. Pretty soon they'll be talking about him in terms of being a lame duck. From the Democrats, from the Republicans' point of view, who seem to be the best bets at this stage to win nominations and potentially offer Americans a good choice next time out?
Well, if Hillary Clinton runs and decides to run, she could well be our nominee.
Would you support her?
In the Democratic Party. Yes, I would support her.
You would support her.
And you talk about moving America forward. We right now have the first African-American president in our history. Then we would have the first woman president in our history. And you talk about setting some precedent and changing things and moving our culture the way it ought to be moving. That would really do it. Plus, I think she's earned the respect and the credibility of Americans now. I mean, she's not just a former president's wife. She's been a senator, she's been Secretary of State, and she's done a heck of a good job. So I don't know if she'll run, but if she runs, she'll be a tough candidate. On the Republican side, when they lost the last election, and people don't think about it, but President Obama won bigger than any president has won in a long time. They were reassessing themselves, and now all at once you've got another one of my senators, Rand Paul, and others running around trying to push the Republican Party even farther right than they've been. And probably as a Democrat, I ought to relish that, because if they happen to nominate somebody like Rand Paul or somebody in that category, the Republicans will be a permanent minority party in the country for years and years.
You're 64 all over again.
Yeah, but as an American, I hope that doesn't happen, quite honestly. We were much better off in our country when our parties, the Republicans were a little bit right of center, the Democrats a little bit left of center, and the people are usually about in the center.
So who's the Republican nominee that can represent the party that you would respect?
Well, I think one of them would be Chris Christie, in New Jersey. Now, I don't think he can get their nomination. And the unfortunate thing about our political parties right now is our nominating process has been sort of taken over by the more extreme elements in both parties. And so for a Republican, even a moderate Republican, to get the nomination, they've got to go out and say some of the craziest things in the world to get votes in these small little caucus types of things, to get the nomination. And then they have to turn around and run countrywide. And they've already pushed themselves issue-wise so far over to the right, they have to explain. Mitt Romney, who was always fairly moderate Republican, was having to deny his own health care plan that he instituted as governor of Massachusetts, and deny a lot of things that I think he really didn't stand for. But to get the nomination, that's what happens there. So they're going to have a tough time of it unless they truly do what they talked about doing after the election, and that was move more toward the center.
Governor, I have a minute left here, and I always thought there were 50 states in the United States, but I now know there aren't. There are 4 commonwealths, and yours is one of them.
That's right.
And what are the other 3?
They are Pennsylvania, they are Virginia, and they are Massachusetts.
3 for 3, Governor. Well done.
That's right, but Kentucky's the best one.
I never doubted it for a second. Steve Beshear, Governor of Kentucky, it's awfully good of you to visit us at TVO tonight. Thanks so much for making us part of your stop here in the province of Ontario.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.